I should like to begin by thanking His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, for hosting the opening dinner last night and for the interesting thoughts that he left with us in his welcoming speech, which has already animated a very intelligent debate about these difficult issues of theocracy, political Islam, and good governance. So we thank him for, as usual, giving us a lot of food for thought and starting the Manama dialogue in such a spirited and interesting way. The first plenary this morning is entitled Strategic Priorities in the Middle East, and you will see that we have an excellent program for you. It's a delight for me personally to have, and I'll introduce him shortly, as our first speaker, Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed Al Khalifa, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bahrain. Important to have the host nation speak to us first this morning. Sheikh Khalid was the Bahraini ambassador to the United Kingdom when we first conceived of the Gulf Dialogue, and it was with him that I had my first technical discussions, as one might put it, on how we might engage the region in this dialogue. And near the end of his first year, he told me coyly that there was a rumor in the Bahraini papers that he might become Minister of Foreign Affairs, which was confirmed the next day, and as a result, we've been working together happily for a decade. Delighted to have the Foreign Minister of the largest Arab country, Egypt. Samar Shukri has had a long career in diplomacy and was, amongst other things, permanent representative of Egypt to the United Nations, also ambassador to Washington, which, as is so often the case, one of the most prestigious positions a diplomat can hold. And it's a delight to have an authoritative Egyptian perspective on strategic priorities in the Middle East this morning. And finally, it's a real pleasure to have with us Philip Hammond, who was Secretary of State for Defense, now Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs. He's appeared in a number of IISS events. We're really pleased to have him with us today, and I think he'll have a very important statement to make on the new thrust of UK policy in this region and the wider Middle East. So with that introduction, it gives me great pleasure to invite first to the podium Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed Al Khalifa, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure to join my good friends and colleagues, His Excellency Samah Shukri and His Excellency Philip Hammond, in this plenary session. This year we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Manama Dialogue, cementing its place as the marquee security forum in the Middle East, an achievement that would certainly not have been possible without the support and commitment of my dear friend, Dr. John Chipman, and the Director General and Chief Executive, Professor Francois Eisberg, the Chairman, and the rest of the IISS team. This morning, I do not intend to give a rundown of all the problems we face in the region, nor am I going to attempt to provide solutions for all of the region's problems. Instead, I'm going to talk about two challenges which I think deserve the most attention in this present time and what I think ought to be the regional priorities. In the preceding year, terrorist groups that were once transnational entities with scattered cells have evolved into organizations that control vast territories, significant financial resources, and possess advanced weapons. However, terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda and Daesh are not the only terrorist threat we face. State-sponsored terrorism is also a problem. The prime example of this is Hezbollah, a terrorist organization that receives significant state backing and has recently expanded into Syria. Another example is the creation of what amount to a parallel standing army to that of the Syrian regime by Iran. We must not also forget that states themselves may directly be involved in terrorist activities. We see the most clearly with the terrible barrel bombing that has resulted in the deaths of literally hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. Given the proliferation of these groups, we recognize that there is no easy solutions, and we know that it will take years to achieve the desired results. But we have no choice but to confront this problem as best we can. As we are all aware by now, military action cannot be the sole line of effort in combating these groups. Equally important is cutting off the financial lifeline that allows these groups to take advantage of physical expansion by selling oil on black markets, organizing extortion rackets, looting historical artifacts, and imposing heavy taxation. That is why Bahrain hosted a meeting of experts from over 30 countries on the 9th of November to put together an action plan to combat the financing of terrorism. The meeting produced the Manama Declaration on combating terrorist financing that provides the blueprint for an effective response to the financing of terrorism. However, this still does not address the most important aspect of the fight against these groups. The terrorist groups I have mentioned rely on theocrats who distort religion to justify their crimes. Therefore, discrediting the ideology that these groups depend on and erasing their ideological appeal in the minds of our youth is the central challenge that we face. It is important to recognize that this can only be done by the countries of the region. Only the scholars and thinkers of our region have the necessary legitimacy and influence in the eyes of our people to delegitimize these theocrats and their wicked distortion of religion. We need to approach the ideological problem in three ways. The first is de-radicalization. There is never an excuse to allow radical and violent ideas to proliferate. We need to counter radicalization at every turn. Our problem is that we are not as enthusiastic about spreading the truth as the radicals are on spreading their falsehood. That needs to change. The second is to combat the sectarian division in the Middle East. We have all witnessed an increasingly disturbing trend where neighborhoods and cities are being quite literally divided based on sectarian lines. We have to seek to put a halt to this development by promoting coexistence and between different sects and different religions within countries and at the local and provincial as well as the national level. The third is education. We have to make sure that our education system are free of ideas that may promote intolerance toward other sects and religious groups. We need an education system that promotes critical thinking and true Islamic values. We are in need of thinkers that will bring forth the true Islamic heritage that gave rise to political, social, and scientific advances and has contributed directly or indirectly to the building of great civilizations around the world. We need to rekindle that heritage and use it once again to build our future. The other major challenge that we face as regional countries is the distrust that exists between regional actors. This distrust often acts as a barrier to meaningful and mutually beneficial cooperation that would otherwise be common sense. There are several reasons for this. the most important of which is that some regional states harbor ambitions to dominate the entire region, or as much of it as they can, seeking to cooperate with other states only when cooperation helps them achieve their hegemonic aims. This leads to distrust and lack of cooperation and information sharing between regional states, which then creates an information vacuum, inevitably leading to the spread of misinformation and distrust. Given these challenges, what should be the main regional priorities? The most pressing regional priority, in my opinion, is that states of the region must step up and take a leadership role in ensuring regional security. It is time that we acknowledge that only the countries of the region, in partnership with our allies, can achieve lasting regional security. One of the main reasons I say this is that a regional security framework built around the leadership of regional states provide the best option for a long-lasting, sustainable security architecture. Every now and again, one hears questions or rumblings regarding the commitment of one major state or other to the security of the Middle East, as if the security of the region hinges solely on whether one great power or another will act as its security guarantor. This type of speculation often results in adverse effects on regional calculations and even economic indicators, such as oil prices. Yet the reality is that regional security depends primarily on the regional states themselves and their decision regarding cooperation and conflict with one another. It is time our regional security architecture reflected this reality. Moreover, as regional states take the leading role in security operations, it will encourage states to work toward a common goal, regardless of any differences they may have with one another. We see this clearly in the GCC. Yes, differences arise from time to time, but we never allow those differences to interfere with the strategic objective of cooperating for joint security. In addition, through cooperation with one another, states of the region will get an opportunity to learn more about one another, about each other's capabilities and intentions. This will reduce the chance of misperception and distrust between neighbors. So how do we go about doing this? We need to increase regional state participation in international efforts. A perfect example of this is the current coalition against Daesh. Participating Gulf states have clearly demonstrated their capabilities and are learning to adapt new responsibilities every day. This kind of experience is crucial to developing our operational capacity. I believe that the GCC has shown itself in the clearest terms as an essential pillar of regional security. Further, regional participation in the international security and peacekeeping missions should not be limited to the Middle East, but should also include sharing the burden with our international partners in other areas of the world as necessary. I would like to take this opportunity to stress the importance of stability in Egypt. Egypt is and has always been an indispensable pillar of regional security, and we must all come together to support the capable government of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi at this crucial time. Now, when I say regional states, do I mean all regional states? Yes. Why should it be inconceivable that all regional countries, including Iran, cooperate to ensure the common benefit for all? In fact, this ought to be the long-term goal of every regional country, however serious the current disagreements are. I have always said that it's a pity that there are not Iranian ships, along with Bahraini, Saudi, Emirati, British, American, and international coalition partnerships in the Gulf, aiding the rest of its neighbors and the international community in securing this strategic and vital waterway. which benefits us all. An effort which just received a significant boost yesterday as the Kingdom of Bahrain and the United Kingdom concluded a naval service facility arrangement, which allows for greater cooperation between UK and regional navies. Indeed, a locally led regional security framework could not be possible without the cooperation of all. However, differences between the GCC and Iran remain, and they are not limited to the nuclear file. We continue to have serious differences regarding Iran's blatant interference in the domestic affairs of regional states. We continue to hear statements emanating from Iran claiming to have taken control of this capital or another, or claiming to revive the revolution in one country or another. A regional security architecture that includes all regional states will never succeed as long as Iran remains on its current path. Instead, the states that are willing and able to take a leading role in regional security efforts should do so while working to solve regional differences with the view to including all states within the regional security framework. The other regional priority is dealing with what I will call the crisis of identity in the region. For approximately 100 years, the people of the Middle East have not yet come to an understanding as to what the future of the region should be, and which ideas should inform how we build our societies. We have seen ideologies rise to dominance only to be discredited and fade away. Whether Arab nationalism or political Islam, the ebb and flow of these ideologies is symptomatic of a region still in flux, a region that is coming to terms with the new realities thrust upon it 100 years ago. This has a direct implication on regional security because it creates the space for radical ideologies and violent groups to emerge. It has also resulted in the growing sectarian divide in the region, as people of the region struggle to redefine their identities. State and non-state actors have promoted an increasingly sectarian vision, which people either have accepted willingly or had no choice but to accept. I will not suggest solution to the problem today, as this is a multi-generational problem. Sorry. I will not suggest solutions to this problem today, as this is a multi-generational problem. But I will say only the sons and daughters of this Middle East can solve this problem for themselves only through education, reflection, and dialogue can our region regain its balance and find its way to prosperity. Thank you.
Sheikh Khalid, thank you very much for those remarks, and especially for three elements of them. Your call essentially for more extrovert GCC, participating actively in coalitions that involve outside powers. Also your call for the GCC to play the role it can in peacekeeping operations, even outside of the Middle East. Your assertion of the need for a strong GCC-Egypt relationship, and your openness also in the right conditions for Iran with other countries of the region to join a new regional security architecture. Thank you very much for those ideas and propositions, and it's my pleasure to invite the Foreign Minister of the Arab Republic of Egypt to take the floor. Thank you, sir.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. دكتور جون شيبمان، مدير المعهد الدولي للدراسات الاستراتيجية، أصحاب السمو والمعالي والسعادة، السيدات والسادة، اسمحوا لي في البداية أن أتوجه بالتحية والتقدير لمملكة البحرين الشقيقة لاستضافة هذا المنتدى الهام الذي استطاع عبر الأعوام العشرة الماضية منذ إنشائه في أن يحتل مكانة متميزة بين المحافل المناظرة إقليمياً ودولياً، وهو ما يبدو جلياً من المستوى الرفيع للمشاركين من مختلف الانتماءات. إنما لابد من التأكيد أيضاً على أن ذلك التميز لم يكن ليتحقق دون رعاية واعية من قيادة البحرين وتعاون مسؤوليها وتفاعلهم مع الجهد الفائق الذي يبذله المعهد الدولي للدراسات الاستراتيجية لتنظيم هذا الحدث ولصياغة محاور نقاشه بحيث يتجاوب مع قضايا الإقليم وترابطها بالتطورات من حوله. سيدات والسادة، إن الحديث عن المنطقة العربية وعن الشرق الأوسط يستدعي أيضاً استعراض أبرز ملامح السياق العالمي الأوسع، لا سيما في ظل التوقعات بل والتنبؤات التي تتعدد بشأن النظام العالمي الذي سيتشكل عقب انتهاء عهد القطبية الثنائية، في حين أننا جميعاً لمسنا وما زلنا نلمس شواهد عديدة على عدم استقرار أي من النظريات التي سعت لوضع إطار منطقي للنظام الدولي الجديد. ورغم ذلك، وإذا كان هناك ما يمكن التنبؤ به بقدر كبير من اليقين في هذا الصدد، فهو ببساطة إننا لن نرى قريباً نظاماً يشبه ما كان سائداً في القرن الماضي، ليس من حيث الاستقطاب فحسب، بل وأيضاً فيما يتعلق بالدور الرئيسي الذي كانت تلعبه الأيديولوجيات على اختلافها في أوقات الحروب والسلام على حد سواء. فضلاً عن ذلك، أثبتت العقود التي تلت نهاية الحرب الباردة وجود حدود ذاتية لاستخدام القوة العسكرية أو القوة الخاشنة وحدها لتأمين المصالح وتحقيق الأهداف، لا سيما بعدما انتهت حقبة التكتلات الجامدة أو القائمة على المواجهة العقائدية بين الغرب والشرق، الأمر الذي من شأنه الإسهام في تخفيض حدة التوتر الناجم على المخاوف من نشوب حروب واسعة النطاق على نمط الحروب العالمية السابقة، وإضافة أولويات جديدة لاستراتيجيات الدول والأطراف الفاعلة. وفي المقابل، باتت معايير أخرى مثل الديمقراطية والاعتماد المتبادل ومستوى النمو والقدرة على الابتكار تحتل مكانا متقدما وتؤثر بشكل واضح ولو بدرجات متفاوتة على قدرة أي دولة أو كيان أو لاعب على تحقيق مستوى أفضل من الاندماج على المستوى الدولي ضمن علاقات أكثر ندية. وبالتوازي مع تلك التحولات والملامح وتداعياتها على الشرق الأوسط، تموج المنطقة بتغيرات يدور الجدل اليوم حول مدى تأثيرها على الترتيبات السياسية والإقليمية التي فرضت على المنطقة عقب الحرب العالمية الأولى، أو على الأقل حول إمكانية استمرارها، خاصة في ظل تعدد الضغوط والتحديات وتنوعها وظهور تهديدات نابعة من المنطقة مثل النزاعات الطائفية والعرقية والإرهاب المتخفي بالدين. كما أن عدم وجود رؤية واضحة ومتكاملة لدى القوى الخارجية حول كيفية التعامل مع تلك القضايا ومع دول وشعوب المنطقة التي أضحت بدورها أكثر وعياً وإدراكاً في تفاعلاتها مع القوى الخارجية يضفي قدراً لا يستهان به من الريبة والشكوك المتبادلة، ويضاعف من صعوبة استخلاص تصور عام حول المخرجات النهائية للتحولات الجارية في المنطقة والتحديات التي تفرضها الأولويات التي يتعين تبنيها في مواجهتها. سيداتي والسادة، إن مراجعة عناصر البيئة الخارجية والتحديات السياسية والأمنية والاقتصادية والاجتماعية في المنطقة تشير إلى عدد من مصادر التهديد وربما الفرص في آن واحد، وهي مراجعة يمكن إيجاز أهمها في النقاط التالية: انخفاض معدلات التنمية لا سيما بمفهومها الشامل في غالبية الدول العالم العربي، وفي ذات الوقت ارتفاع نسب نمو سكانها الذين يتكون غالبيتهم من الشباب المتطلع إلى الحصول على مستويات أفضل من التعليم والخدمات الصحية والوظائف. تعاظم الضغوط التي تواجهها أفكار الدولة القومية والهوية الوطنية الجامعة في بعض الحالات نتيجة محاولات الإيحاء بأن قصور الحكومات لا يتعلق بعوامل سياسية أو اقتصادية، وإنما بفشل فكرة الدولة القومية ذاتها. استغلال مرحلة التحول الاجتماعي التي تمر بها المنطقة من جانب الجماعات التي تدعو إلى الفكر المتطرف والتكفيري في إرجاء المنطقة بل والعالم، وارتباط ذلك بانتشار تنظيمات إرهابية في المنطقة. بروز الصراعات المذهبية والعرقية التي تفشت وباتت تهدد الاستقرار الداخلي لعدد من الدول المنطقة، والتي ساهمت في إذكائها تدخلات بعض القوى الدولية والإقليمية. ارتباط ما تقدم بصعود واضح لدور فاعلين غير حكوميين يسعون لإضعاف بل وتفتيت الدولة القومية لصالح روابط عابرة لحدود تستند للدين أو المذهب أو العرق، مع تنامي التدخلات الخارجية المباشرة في دول المنطقة على نحو يؤثر على أمنها ومصالحها. غموض مستقبل عملية السلام من حيث فرص نجاحها أو تكرار الإحباط والفشل، مع استمرار تقويض الأساس الجغرافي لتسوية وفقاً لصيغة الدولتين، ومن ثم مستقبل فكرة المفاوضات ككل في غياب عوائد السلام التي من شأنها تأكيد شرعيته كخيار استراتيجي. التهديد والذي يمثله استمرار الخلاف حول برنامج إيران النووي والمعضلة التي يطرحها ما بين مخاوف الانتشار وحق الدول الأطراف معاهدة منع الانتشار في الاستخدام السلمي للطاقة النووية، مع تعثر جهود إخلاء منطقة الشرق الأوسط من كافة أسلحة الدمار الشامل. من هذا المنطلق فإن التحديات والتطورات السابقة تستدعي من دول المنطقة في الأساس، سواء على المستوى الوطني أو الإقليمي وبالتعاون مع شركائها الدوليين، التواصل لرؤية متسقة على ضوء الأولويات التالية: 1. دعم دور الدول المدنية الحديثة وتعظيم استخدام الموارد الاقتصادية لزيادة القدرات في مواجهة التهديدات وبناء هياكل عصرية لتكامل الاقتصادي بين الدول العربية. 2. تحقيق التنمية المستدامة في المنطقة استناداً إلى مفهوم الأمن الشامل، وليس فقط لبعديه الأمني والعسكري، مع معالجة الاختلالات الاقتصادية والاجتماعية والتنموية، لأن استمرارها سيكون هو التحدي الأكبر للأمن في المنطقة. 3. ارتباطاً بما تقدم، فإنه للرغم الأهمية القصوى لمواجهة تنظيم داعش في المهد، إلا أن ذلك ينبغي أن يتم ضمن إطار الاستراتيجية شاملة لمحاربة جميع التنظيمات متشابهة الفكر في المنطقة. 4. إسباغ أولوية متقدمة على جهود استئناف مسار المفاوضات بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين وصولاً إلى تسوية سلمية وإقامة دولة فلسطينية قابلة للحياة ذات سيادة حقيقية. فلا يوجد بديل استراتيجي لاستئناف المفاوضات في ظل تكلفة الفراغ الناشئ عن جمودها وتراجع الأمل في تحقيقها لنتائج ملموسة. ومن المهم هنا توظيف المبادرة العربية للسلام واستعادة الدعم الدولي لأساس المفاوضات ودفعها من خلال مجلس الأمن، للتأكيد أنه لا سبيل للالتفاف حول هذا الأساس من خلال فرض حلول إحادية أو مواجهات غير مجدية. 4. تعزيز الحوار بين الدول العربية وبين كافة القوى الدولية الفاعلة سواء التقليدية أو البازغة، والنظر في كيفية توظيف ذلك الحوار في دعم استقلالية القرار العربي وتنويع خياراته الاستراتيجية. 5. العمل تدريجياً على إرساء علاقات جوار صحية تتسم بالتكافؤ والندية بين دول منطقة الشرق الأوسط من خلال إجراءات تسهم في ضمان الحفاظ على أمن واستقرار الإقليم على أساس المبادئ والاتفاقيات الحاكمة للعلاقات الدولية، وبعيداً عن محاولات التمدد أو بسط النفوذ. 6. أن تشجيع الحوارات القائمة على الاحترام المتبادل بين الأديان والمذاهب والطوائف وتعزيز قيم العيش السلمي المشترك باتت ضرورة ملحة في مواجهة أفكار الإقصاء والاغتراب داخل المجتمعات. ولا بد هنا من أن تشمل الحوارات مختلف القضايا تفادياً لإيحاء باستهداف عقيدة بذاتها، فلا ينبغي أن يدعي أحد الأطراف في ظل الحوار أنه يقف على أرضية أخلاقية أعلى. سيداتي والسادة، إن الأولويات السابقة على قدر أهميتها وبداهة الكثير منها تحتاج إلى سياق من شأنه أن يكسبها الثقل والقوة الدفع اللازمين، وتوفير هذا السياق يبدو بشكل متزايد رهنا بإنجلاء غبار المرحلة الحالية عن نظام إقليمي عربي جديد. ومن ثم فإن وجود مثل هذا النظام يمثل بدوره ضرورة استراتيجية. فعلى مدى العقود الأربعة الماضية تشكلت محاور مختلفة في منطقة الشرق الأوسط، عرف كل منها ذاته والآخر بناء على التناقض بينهما. فما بين محاور الرفض والمقاومة والسلام والاعتدال والسنة والشيعة والمشرق والمغرب كادت الهوية العربية أن تتفتت، وباتت المنطقة العربية مستباحة من قوى إقليمية ودولية. لكن مرحلة التحول الحالية حملت مع تحدياتها فرصة تحلل تلك المحاور بعدما أظهر تقاطعها مع التطورات التي شهدتها المنطقة عدم ملائمتها لتحديات المستقبل. ومن ثم فمن المهم ألا يكون تجديد النظام الإقليمي العربي قائما على أساس أي من تلك المحاور، فليس مطلوبا أن يكون هذا النظام موجها ضد أي طرف من داخل العالم العربي، ولا أن يستهدف أطرافا بعينها في خارجه، وإنما أن يكون هدفه بناء الذات لمواجهة تحديات العصر وتحقيق التنمية والإعداد لتمكين الجيل الجديد، لا سيما وأن هناك إدراكا متزايدا داخل دول المنطقة النظام العربي، لا سيما من خلال تجاربها، بأنه لا بد من احترام إرادة الشعوب، وأن وعي هذه الشعوب خاصة الشباب هو المحرك الحقيقي للاتجاه نحو المستقبل الذي لن يكون فيه مكان لأنظمة سلطوية تدين بولاء للفرد أو للديكتاتورية تدعي التحدث باسم الدين. والمؤكد أن استعادة مصر لمكانها في قلب النظام العربي الجديد يعيد له اتزانه وحيويته ويثريه بتجارب مصر الممتدة، لا سيما على مدى الأعوام القليلة الماضية منذ ثورته 25 من يناير و30 من يونيو، ومروراً بعملية التحول الديمقراطي بسلبياتها وإيجابياتها، وهو ما يتسق مع التطلع لأن يتسع النظام العربي لكل أقطاره، ومع انفتاحه على الآخرين في محيطه وفي العالم كله، وأن يسعى لأن يكون عاملاً إيجابياً وفعالاً في النظام الدولي، وأن تأخذ مصلحته في الاعتبار دون المساس بأمنه القومي ورفض التدخل في شؤونه تحت ذرائع طائفية أو مذهبية أو عرقية. سيداتي والسادة، إن المشهد الراهن يطرح العديد من الاحتمالات التي من المهم إزائها أن تدرك الدول العربية وجميع دول منطقة الشرق الأوسط إن عدم استقرار الأوضاع واستمرار الأزمات سوف تنسحب تداعياته على الاستقرار والأمن في باقي المنطقة ودول الإقليم، وإن مناخ التوتر والأزمات يمكن أن يهيئ المناخ لتنامي العنف وإسكاء التطرف العابر للدول والمهدد للاستقرار في المنطقة بصفة عامة. وبالتالي فإن المصلحة المشتركة تقتضي تبني أولويات متكاملة وصولاً إلى تجاوز الأزمات التي يعاني منها بعض الدول المنطقة حالياً، وإلى تحقيق النمو والاستقرار اللازمين كي تمارس هذه المنطقة الهامة دوراً حقيقياً وبناءً على مستوى العالم، إلا أن تضيف إلى مشكلاته القائمة. وأشكر شيخ خالد وفيليب هانموند على مشاركتي في هذه الندوة. شكرا جزيلا.
Foreign Minister, thank you very much for that elucidation. I think when we move to the to the debate. There'll be a number of questions also to be asked about the specific set of strategic relationships that Egypt may wish to establish with a number of GCC states, and indeed with the GCC as a body, because there's been an awful lot of discussion about that special relationship, if I could style it that way. May I just remind people that if you are interested in making a comment or asking a question, for you to insert your name card into your microphone and press the button. When the green light goes on, don't be intimidated by it. The microphone is not yet on. I'll turn it on. But please, if you want to ask a question, do put your name card in and press the button. It's a delight now for me to invite Philip Hammond, the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, United Kingdom, to address this audience. Thank you, sir.
Your Royal Highnesses, fellow ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to be back here in Bahrain for this conference, and I'm delighted to join my Bahraini and Egyptian colleagues on the platform. IISS held its first conference in the English seaside town of Brighton in 1958. It has since blossomed into a global network, creating important opportunities for policymakers and thinkers to strive for a common understanding of global challenges and their solutions. Its contribution to policymaking in the Middle East has been significant, and I congratulate you, John, on this 10th anniversary of the Manama Dialogue. We are fortunate to enjoy the hospitality of His Majesty the King and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, to both of whom I express our collective gratitude this morning. And I'd like to take this opportunity as well to congratulate Bahrain on its 4th parliamentary election, which has just taken place, and to wish the new parliament and government every success. The 175,000 British citizens living in this region helped to sustain the UK's strong historic links to the Gulf. The Royal Air Force has had a base in Manama for over 80 years, and our Navy was sailing these seas for several hundred years before that. The UK, Bahrain, and indeed other GCC states share an intuitive understanding as seafaring nations that in a globalized world, our domestic security and prosperity depends on developments beyond our shores. We must never lose sight of this simple truth. We must never allow the isolationists to convince our people of the superficially attractive proposition that distance or oceans can insulate. In a globalized world, they cannot. To our partners in the Gulf, my message is this: your security concerns are our security concerns. The current British government came to power in 2010 determined to build our deep historic friendships in this region into partnerships fit for the 21st century. Since then, we have stepped up our engagement and cooperation with every one of our Gulf partners. Reflecting that clear understanding that your security is our security, your prosperity is our prosperity, your stability is our stability. So our strategic priority for the Gulf and for the wider region is to build partnerships. Partnerships for security, partnerships for prosperity, partnerships for stability. I was delighted last night to sign a memorandum of understanding with His Excellency Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed Al Khalifa in the presence of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. That arrangement will put the long-standing presence of the Royal Navy in Bahrain on a permanent footing. Since the 1980s, the Royal Navy has carried out continuous patrols in the Gulf and has enjoyed the use of the facilities of Mina Salman Port from which to do so. The expansion of our footprint that this arrangement will now allow means we will have the capability to send more and bigger ships and to sustain them and their crews in permanent facilities. A clear statement of our commitment to our sustained presence east of Suez. A reminder of our historic and close relations with Bahrain, and another example of our growing partnership with Gulf allies to tackle the threats we face together. And those threats have taken on a new and insidious form. In Benghazi and in Mosul, in Yemen and in northern Nigeria, we face a common but shadowy enemy, extremists who seek to hijack Islam to impose their own perverted agenda by fear and by the sword, who reject all norms of civilized behavior, who challenge all structures of established order. What His Royal Highness the Crown Prince described last night as the spread of theocratism. This year, the world has worked at one to take the fight to Daesh. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, amongst others in the region, have made telling contributions to the US-led military response to Daesh. The UAE has flown more sorties than any coalition member bar the US. Neighbouring countries have shown immense generosity in supporting Britain and other coalition participants, and immense compassion in hosting refugees from Syria. They shoulder a heavy burden for which we must all be grateful. Those who cannot readily afford to do so on their own need the ongoing generosity that has already been so fulsomely displayed by Gulf and Western countries. And I want to particularly thank Kuwait for hosting the 2 UN pledging conferences, as well as for its particularly generous contributions of over $800 million. The coalition strikes have helped halt the Daesh advance. But to first push them back out of Iraq and then defeat them completely, more is required. The rebuilding of the local forces, which can exploit on the ground the opportunities that air power can create, and a political coalition to achieve 3 key objectives. First, Iraq and Syria need sustainable, legitimate, and inclusive governments capable of providing their own security. In Syria, it is clear that the only way to defeat Daesh and bring stability and security back to the country is through political transition. Assad's track record shows he cannot be a partner. So we must look to moderates in all of Syria's communities to build the basis for more inclusive governance in the future. In Iraq, the new leaders must deliver on their commitments to inclusiveness, and we welcome the progress which Prime Minister al-Abadi has started to make in this respect. The 2nd of December agreement on revenue and oil sharing between the central government and the KRG is a significant and encouraging sign of progress. This now needs to be implemented as soon as possible. I know that both sides are committed to do this. And it needs to be matched by similar outreach to and symbolic progress with the Sunni community. In return for this progress, Iraq's regional and other partners must be ready to support the country's political unity with renewed and enhanced diplomatic engagement, strengthening bilateral and regional ties, support to building capacity, reconstruction, and the political will to give Prime Minister al-Abadi the space to deliver his reform programme. Secondly, we must build a culture of challenging and marginalising extremism, as Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed has said. Above all else, this means supporting and empowering the voices of reason and moderation in all our countries. In this endeavour, regional voices will have the greatest impact. Clerics and scholars from Saudi Arabia to Egypt to Iraq, in the UK and across the world, have stepped forward to denounce the so-called Islamic State, the caliphate it advocates, and the violence and barbarity that Daesh have unleashed on an innocent population. They are right to do so, and we must, all of us, support and encourage their bravery in the face of threats and intimidation. And thirdly, we must constantly enhance practical counter-terrorism measures. I commend Bahrain for hosting last month's conference on counter-terrorist financing, and welcome legislation passed by Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Qatar to prevent and disrupt terrorist financing. It falls to us all, of course, to ensure that well-intentioned legislation in our respective countries is rigorously implemented in practice, and we should cooperate effectively to do so. But our partnership for security must also confront issues beyond the current immediate threat from Daesh. Let me pick out 3 further areas of focus. First, Iran, a difficult but important neighbor, too big to ignore, and a vital determinant of future security of the Gulf region. In negotiations with Iran on its nuclear program, we must choose persistence over convenience, as the E3+3 did last month in agreeing at Vienna an extension to negotiations, upholding our principled position on enrichment rather than succumbing to the temptation to make unwise concessions to get a deal done. Our ultimate objective remains a comprehensive agreement which delivers on the clear principle that Iran must not be able to develop a nuclear weapons capability. The interim agreement maintains important constraints on Iran's nuclear program and the vast majority of nuclear-related sanctions. Their implementation and the pressure they continue to apply is our shared responsibility if we are to reach, over the next few months, our shared goal of a comprehensive settlement and an Iran with a nuclear program that is purely for peaceful purposes. And we must remain clear-eyed that whether or not we make progress towards a nuclear agreement will not alter our judgments on Iran's responsibility for propping up the Assad regime in Syria or its ongoing support to destabilizing militant groups in the region. Iran should see the Daesh threat as a chance to show that it can be part of the solution, not just the problem. It should choose this moment to engage constructively with the international community for a new future of partnership rather than confrontation. Secondly, Yemen. We share the desire of the GCC for a more stable and secure Yemen. If we work actively together, we can yet make that happen. But with increasing external interference and an active al-Qaeda network, Yemen faces the imminent risk of further sectarian strife and of economic collapse. The UK firmly supports the direction set by President Hadi and the country's new government under Prime Minister Khalid Baha to avert these threats. We call for immediate implementation by all signatories of this September's Peace and National Partnership Agreement, which itself builds on the GCC initiative and the National Consensus Dialogue which followed it. It is vital that we maintain our support, all of us, material as well as political, and that the Yemeni government deploys that support wisely and responsibly as recommended by the World Bank. All outside actors, including Iran, need to work constructively in this direction. And as co-chair with our Saudi colleagues of the Friends of Yemen and as a member of the G10, the UK will do all we can to encourage Yemen actively down this path. Finally, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, where we must not succumb to those voices who would give up on the search for a negotiated solution. Recent developments, including in Jerusalem, are cause for grave concern. But they only remind us how great is the need for perseverance in pursuit of a negotiated two-state solution to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, no matter how remote the prospects of that solution may appear to be. And at this dangerous moment, Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas need to show bold leadership, avoid steps that make peace more difficult, and find the political courage to move forward. The UK will work closely with international partners, including our friends in the region, to support the US-led efforts working with Egypt to get the parties to resume serious negotiations that will lead to the only credible permanent solution, an Israel secure within its pre-67 borders and a viable Palestinian state. In this, as in every region, there can be no durable security unless governments can find lasting solutions to their economic challenges. Now, I'm acutely conscious that there will be people from all corners of the world who would willingly exchange their own economic challenges for those faced by the Gulf states. But challenges there are in this region. Economic challenges, overdependence on primary energy products and consequent budget vulnerability to commodity price fluctuations. Demographic challenges, as Sami Shukri mentioned, in particular, the intrinsically destabilizing problem of high youth unemployment and frustrated economic expectations. So we need to match our partnership for security with a partnership for prosperity. Now, that doesn't mean that the UK or any other Western partners can prescribe solutions, but we can offer suggestions. Economic diversification is already something many countries in the region are pursuing energetically. But in the longer term, there is surely also scope for greater economic coordination and connectivity across this region. Bodies like the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and OPEC show that there is no intrinsic barrier to such cooperation, building on the successes of the Gulf Cooperation Council. As the wider region looks to diversify its economy beyond hydrocarbons, is there any fundamental reason why it cannot aspire to more comprehensive arrangements, such as those achieved over time by ASEAN, to deliver a more diverse, a more interconnected, and consequently a more secure regional economy in the future? Because on a more secure regional economy can be built a more secure region. And in your pursuit of sustainable regional economic growth, I do see a clear role for the UK. Our partnership for prosperity should focus on the issues which matter most to all of our peoples. Issues like education. The UK is home, for example, to the largest number of Omani students outside the Arab world and to 15,000 Saudi Arabian students. In healthcare, where we're working with colleagues in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait to develop healthcare infrastructure and share expertise in managing and running hospitals. And in transportation, where we look forward to contributing to the GCC rail project and other public transport projects. So as we renew our commitments to work together for lasting security and prosperity, the UK and the Gulf region should see each other as strategic partners for generations to come, not just in the face of the challenges of the present. Forging mutually reinforcing partnerships for security, for prosperity, and for stability, based, yes, on shared interests and on shared history, but above all, based on the insight that ours is a shared future. Thank you.
Foreign Secretary, thank you for that really important statement. First, your very kind words at the beginning about the IISS, but much more importantly for your combination of a geostrategic and geoeconomic analysis. People will have noted your assertion that the new defense agreement with the Kingdom of Bahrain facilitates a permanent naval presence here east of Suez, a resonant phrase, and also your view that the UK and Gulf region should forge a strategic partnership for generations to come. But equally important, your sense that social cohesion, economic growth, jobs for the region's youth are crucial and important underpinnings to long-term stability in the region. So for that genuine strategic statement, thank you very much. There's lots now to debate and discuss. Again, let me remind you that you should put your name card in with the chip facing you and press the button. If you do only one of those two tasks, you won't catch my digital eye. A few have already done so, and let me take a number of questions and comments from the floor at the beginning. First, could I invite François Aisbourg?
Thank you, John, and thank you to all three speakers. All three of you have addressed the issue of the fight against Daesh. And of course, one of the complexities of the fight against Daesh is its interaction with the multifaceted civil war in Syria, possibly the most violent high-level conflict going on in the world today. Now, yesterday, at the Sky News Al Arabiya debate prefacing this dialogue, Dr. Mousavian suggested that the situation in Syria would best be dealt with by a 5+5 format. That is, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council plus the 5 major regional states, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Egypt. Now, what do the panelists make of such a suggestion? A suggestion which would indeed imply that Iran, and here I lift the words used by Minister Hammond, that Iran would not only be part of the region's problems, but possibly also part of the solution. And should this suggestion be pursued, how should it be pursued? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. We'll invite the panelists in about 5 or 6 minutes to come back to that and the other points. The 5+5 proposition is the first question on the table. From Indonesia, could I invite Professor Dewi Fortuna Anwar?
Thank you very much, John. I would like to congratulate all of the 3 speakers for such powerful interventions. I would like to address my questions to the foreign ministers of Bahrain and Egypt. You have, both of you, outlined the challenges and also the possible solutions. And Mr. Hammond has already mentioned also about the example from the Asian region with ASEAN and so on. So I would like to tease you on that. You have highlighted the problems of mutual distrust, which makes it very difficult to have regional cooperation. But you have also highlighted, in fact, the common threats of internal development and internal governance, as well as transnational threats of religious extremism and the negative impacts of external intervention. And then you've both called for regional cooperation and also a more autonomous regional order where the region themselves, the regional countries can really have ownership of the problems while at the same time opening to international cooperation. Now, I would like to ask you more specifically, you already have modalities in the region. There is the GCC and the Arab League. Are you thinking of revitalizing any of these two, or are you thinking of a new modality of a regional cooperation? Which would be the core, which would be the ASEAN of this region, which could work towards establishing a more cohesive sub-regional order on the one hand, but also at the same time able to act as a driver for wider regional security architecture, managing relations with external powers in a more symmetrical manners. So, could you give us that examples? And also this managing relations between small countries and big countries. Indonesia has always been the dominant country in Southeast Asia, but it has always been very sensitive of the distrust from smaller countries. So it has gone out of its way to be leading from behind, to be low profile, at the same time trying to provide intellectual leadership. It's always very, very difficult. If you go too hard, you're accused of being a bully. If you don't go hard enough, you're accused of failing your leadership position. So countries like Egypt and so on, how are you going to play that challenge? Thank you.
Dewi, thank you very much for a couple of very challenging questions there. From Germany, Dr. Florence Gaub.
Good morning. I work for the European Union now, but I used to work for NATO, so my question will be very blunt. We started out with NATO in Europe in a context of massive distrust as well. So my question is related to everything that has been said also by the previous speaker. How do you want to establish regional security or regional security architecture in the context of distrust that you've mentioned? How do you want to overcome it, and why are we not there yet? Thank you.
From the Kingdom of Bahrain, Rashid Al-Dosseri.
Thank you. All the issues being raised here, from the strategic partnerships to tackle the regional security, Yemen, nuclear, Iranian nuclear file, question of Palestine, we always see that there is a tumbling block, and always behind this tumbling block, a black sheep. How can we compel that black sheep to come to terms with the rest of the regional countries, whether that be, through the Security Council or international collective efforts? How can we deal with this tumbling block? My question is for all the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And from the IISS, Christian Lemire.
Thank you, John. Just a brief question for Secretary Hammond, if possible. You mentioned a new naval support facility within Bahrain. Could you give more details on the size of that facility? And you say that larger vessels may well visit Bahrain in the future. Are we talking about carriers? Are we talking about Type 45s? What exactly can we expect to see in Bahrain?
And from Sweden, Robert Rydberg.
Thank you, and thank you for three excellent introductions. None of the three speakers, including the UK Foreign Secretary, mentioned the role of the European Union. What importance do you give the European Union as it comes to the strategic priorities of the Middle East? Thank you.
Good. Well, I think you just made the menu an awful lot richer with that question. There's still a number of people to engage in the debate, but since there's a lot on the table already, could I bring it back to the panel, perhaps in reverse, in the same order in which they originally spoke? Sheikh Khalid first, maybe on 5+5 and the battle against Daesh. Maybe Minister Shukri on who could be the driver of regional architecture, and then I'll end with Philip Hammond, who got about 3 or 4 questions, including specific ones on the naval facility and the like. So Sheikh Khalid first.
Well, now we have a new number, 5+5. We haven't finished work with the 5+1 talking to Iran yet. But anyway, I think we're mixing two issues here. We're mixing the Syrian issue, the Syrian revolution, the Syrian conflict, with the issue of proliferation of terrorism in the region. The terrorists have crossed the borders of Syria and went into Iraq and threatening our whole region. So let's separate the issues. Regarding the Syrian conflict, we have the Geneva 1 meeting and the points we agreed on, and then we have the Geneva 2 conference, which things not necessarily went in the preferable direction, because we were all in one room with the representative of the Syrian government and their foreign minister, and everybody was writing off Syria as non-existent while they were with us in the room. So we'll just have to be a bit open in thinking how to save lives as a priority before anything else, because people are dying every day. So that's the Syrian conflict. But when it comes to terrorism, it's a different matter. It's not only limited to, as we said since yesterday, It's not only limited to Daesh. It's not only limited to this year or last year or the year before. We've been facing it. We're the people of the region. If it was felt by a beheading of an innocent civilian trying to help in faraway places, we live it around us every day, and we've been suffering from it for quite some time. So terror is an issue that has to be dealt with comprehensively, I repeat, and I say, because the important matter is we don't want to end up 2 years from now talking about another group which would give some kind of a sense of moderation or even maybe legitimacy to groups like Daesh that are fighting today. So we need to be very careful in staying the course, and whoever is a terrorist is a terrorist, and no matter what tactics are changed or what place of that conflict is happening. So that's the matter. But there's another point, if I may say something about the question about how would we establish a regional security architecture with such distrust? Well, this question should go to the country that is every day until yesterday, somebody there, the commander of the guard, says that they have given life to a revolution in this country or another, or that they have taken capitals, 4 Arab capitals under their control. These are the statements that continue to fuel the mistrust. And none of such statements come from our part or from our countries. And of course, this is an important forum, Dr. Chipman, and you've invited the Iranian foreign minister, and it would have been helpful to see him with us here, but he's not with us. So it would take some effort to remove the mistrust and build confidence again. Thank you.
Minister Shukri.
Well, concerning the mechanisms that are in place in the region that are capable of its future direction, I believe that the current mechanisms, whether in the Arab League or the GCC and the cooperation that exists between them, are quite competent mechanisms to deal with the challenges of the future. It's a matter of greater implementation of the various legal and political commitments that are made by the individual states to implement many of the relevant cooperative arrangements that are in place and that can positively impact the region's development. We look forward to greater involvement, and I believe that the current challenges, the parallelity of interests of the states of the region can create the necessary momentum for greater cooperation and finding more avenues that will be mutually beneficial to the states of the region. But we do not need to create any new entities or architecture. I think we should put our minds to greater implementation and greater ability of those mechanisms in place to undertake the responsibilities and the role to which they were actually devised. The Arab League is close to its 70th anniversary, and this is, I think, a momentous occasion for it to undertake what it was originally established to do, that is to create greater solidarity and a greater platform of cooperation between all of the Arab states. As to Egypt's role as a leader in the region, we certainly are working in unison with our Arab brethren. We neither lead from the back or from the front, but in coordination with the states of the region, and Egypt's role has traditionally been a positive one. We have no territorial interests or expansionist ideologies, and we are committed to our shared goals and shared objectives, especially in these times, whether it is in combating terrorism in all its forms, wherever it might exist, or in creating the economic developmental ambitions that are necessary with a population primarily now with the youth component being its main driving force. One of the benefits of what we have witnessed over the last 3 years, as I was mentioning last night to His Excellency Sheikh Khalid, is that there is a greater recognition of the necessity of greater solidarity, especially between Egypt and the vast majority of the GCC countries. There is a renewed sense of ownership, of interconnectivity, of a mutual future that binds us. And this is not only at a political level, this is at a grassroots level, which I believe is much more important. It is through that grassroots level and that sense of collectiveness that now exists with the various populations that can be the primary motivator for us to forge ahead in a collective and a cooperative manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Shukri. And we all hope that after Tuesday you will feel you have a strong relationship not just with the vast majority, but with all of the GCC countries. Philip Hammond.
We await to see that.
John, thank you. A few observations. On the first question about Syria, P5+5. Look, I'm afraid I don't think there's much point in constructing new formats to get people to sit down and talk about this problem unless we're confident that the people that we're sitting down have a shared view of how to go forward, a shared view of the end objective. And the group that was suggested, the 10 countries that was suggested, I'm afraid do not yet share a view of the desirable end result in relation to Syria. A significant number of them are clear that Bashar al-Assad cannot be part of the future in Syria, but key players within that group have not yet reached that conclusion in a clear and well-expressed way. So that's, I think, sadly, a stretch too far at the moment. There's more work to be done to get the big actors aligned in their understanding of what the future could look like in Syria. I just want to say something about the question of distrust, because that word has come up quite often. The speaker from Indonesia who talked about the ASEAN example and the issue of mutual distrust. I'm just thinking back to the early days of post-war Europe, where I think it's probably fair to say that there was plenty of mutual distrust. And two things overcame that mutual distrust. The first was deepening economic cooperation. As a region starts to trade together, work together, see its economies become ever more interconnected, its peoples ever more personally connected, distrust starts to fade. And the other thing which can address this particular problem is the presence of an external threat. And the presence of an external, there will be people around the room thinking, aha, Iran. I'm thinking about the threat of terrorism, the challenge from political Islam, which is a threat to all of the countries of the region, potentially including Iran. So let's use the presence of the external threat. Let's use the necessity of greater economic cooperation and collaboration to break down those barriers of distrust. And in relation to the question about larger and smaller countries, this seems to me to be a region that is ideally structured for cooperation. If you look at the countries around this Middle East region, some have large populations with huge potential, some have accumulated financial wealth, some have as yet not fully realized or exploited natural resources. The synergies from greater cooperation are huge and obvious and waiting to be tapped in a way that can be very positive for the region as a whole. Somebody asked about the black sheep. I think I can probably decode the euphemism. Look, again, go back to the Europe example. The first thing you have to do is understand your adversary. If we think back to Europe in the early days of the Cold War, we invested huge amounts in understanding our adversary, learning to think what the world looks like through our adversary's eyes, and through that understanding, being able to shape our response, both to defend and protect ourselves, but also to seek to break down some of the barriers that separate us. I was asked two specific questions, one about the facilities at Mina Salman and the use we would make of them. The key issue is permanence. We've enjoyed the use of the port facilities at Mina Salman for many years, but on an ad hoc basis with some very poor, frankly, some very poor temporary accommodation. This has been regarded as an operational posting for UK armed forces, very short tours, very operational type living conditions. What we want to do now with our Bahraini hosts is move to making this a permanent location where people will rotate for longer periods on accompanied postings so that we have a permanent facility here, able to support and maintain our ships and sustain our crews for long periods rather than having to rotate them on a regular basis. And yes, of course, it will accommodate Type 45 destroyer deployments, a very important capability that we can offer to the regional security, the world's, dare I say, the world's most advanced air defense destroyer. And in due course, I don't think any nation would be building two 65,000-ton aircraft carriers in the current security situation in the world without expecting to deploy them into this region as the need dictates. So all of this underpins the need for Britain to have a clear and permanent presence here in the Gulf as we go forward. And finally, on the EU role, there is a role for the European Union in all of these areas. Clearly, the European Union, representing as it does the world's largest single marketplace, can have a key role in catalyzing economic collaboration in the Gulf through free trade agreements, preferential access agreements, and so on. The EU can also play a key role in support of the Middle East peace process, which is one of the underpinning challenges for us in all of these discussions that we have. So yes, it clearly has a role.
Many thanks. We'll now return to the floor. We have 13 minutes left. We've got 6 interventions, and we want the panel to be able to give a good, crisp response to them all. I'll invite first Rad Khawaji from the United Arab Emirates. Riyadh.
Thank you, John. Just a quick question to the panelists on what we heard recently about Iran announcing that it is now launching air raids inside Iraq. So can we take this as the coalition or the alliance accepting Iran as a member, or is Iran acting alone? And if Iran is acting alone, isn't there any coordination? And how will the Arab members on the panel, the Bahraini and Egyptian foreign minister, would comment on the issue of what's the objective? Is it just fighting Daesh, or this is a war on terror? If this is a war on terror, what about the Shiite militias that are regarded as terrorists inside Syria and Iraq? Are we to expect to see the alliance launching air raids on these Shiite militias, or this attack will only be against Daesh? Thank you.
And from Kuwait and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps in London, Khalid Al-Duwashan. Khalid.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chipman. I have 2 questions, one of them to Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed, and the other to the Secretary Hammond and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt. Sheikh Khalid, you know that the Gulf people are so pleased with the reconciliation between the Gulf states lately. And they have impression that it will remain solid because of the danger surrounding us. Some of them then doubt. They said that it probably will be temporary one. My question, you know, that how you feel as a minister of foreign affairs of the Gulf state. Second question, you know, Sheikh Khalid, isn't you find it is a time for us in the Gulf to have crisis management, to monitor all of the activities in the Gulf and to see the surrounding, you know, that area and to give some recommendations to the leader of the Gulf? The second, you know, John, sorry, for the Secretary Hammond and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt. There are two schools of thoughts, you know, in the West. One of them said that let the Arab deals with their problems. We should not interfere as a West, you know, in their affairs. They understand the area. They can solve the problems of the area. While the other said, no, because we created the problems of the Middle East, you know, through Sykes-Picot, you know, treaty, and divided the Arab world, and now the problems, you know, that we are facing from those countries, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Palestine. So how do you think, you know, about these two school of thoughts? Thank you, John.
Thank you much, Khalid. From Bahrain, Dr. Yusuf Mashal. In a second. Florida Villas.
Thank you, John. Secretary Hammond made an impassioned plea that good-intentioned legislation should be rigorously enforced. The same surely applies to international commitments, and I'm thinking of his reference to the UN pledging conference. We discovered in the last week that many of those commitments have not been met, to the extent that the hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees that have spilled over into neighboring countries now face something even worse than their current horrendous plight. And the possible effect of this, of course, on very fragile neighboring states and that increasing burden. And I wondered if Secretary Hammond, or in fact any of the other members of the panel, had anything to say about that.
Thank you. And now Yusuf Mashal should be on now.
Yes, thank you. I know the same subject has been talked about, but to His Excellency Sheikh Khalid, you have mentioned several times on several occasions that Iran must show some trust. And you've just said that an invitation was sent to the foreign minister. How do you propose this can be done? If the foreign minister is here, how would you really propose this can be done to get this trust? On the other hand, everyone agrees from yesterday and today that Iran is an important partner in the area. Do you see the possibility for talks, direct talks, between the Arab Gulf countries and Iran, away from the talks that is being done now on specific items, somewhere in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. A short question to Foreign Minister Shukri. You mentioned, sir, nuclear non-proliferation, but not the specific subject of a zone free of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. I take it that because that issue is so stalemated, it's no longer of the highest priority in a short presentation, the time one has. Would that be an accurate conclusion?
Thanks. And finally, Kurt Lauk from Germany. Kurt Lauk.
Mine's.
Yeah, you have.
It's working? No, it's not working.
Yes, it is. Go ahead.
Now it's working.
Yep.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for excellent presentations. I think they were very clear about the challenges. And if I look at some elements of the challenges, I did hear lack of cohesion in some of the regional states, lack of cohesion between some of the regional states, religious divide, terrorism, declining ability of state to keep order, lack of innovation and growth, nuclear proliferation. Now, I think it would be a great challenge for any academic to come up with a worst scenario. And I do understand that you couldn't present a solution. But my question to the foreign ministers of Egypt and Bahrain is, what do you think are key elements of a solution going forward without presenting a full solution? And who would implement it? Would that be a regional assignment solely, or would you need help from the outside? What type of help and by whom? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, could I ask the three foreign ministers to take those questions directed to them and give crisp answers to them, and I'll ask the ministers to answer in reverse order of their initial speaking order. So Philip Hammond first, Minister Shukri, and we'll close with our host, Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed. Philip Hammond.
Thank you, John. Let me answer two of those questions. First of all, this apparent divide between public opinion that says let the Arabs sort out their own problems and those, on the other hand, who say actually it's all our fault, so we should help them sort them out. Actually, I subscribe to neither view. One of the joys of being British is that pretty much wherever you go in the world, somebody can point to a line on a map that was drawn by somebody who was British and blame them for the problem that we're dealing with today. But I don't think it's a question of being motivated by guilt, nor of withdrawing and saying this is nothing to do with us, let those who inhabit the region sort out their own problems. We're very clear that our partnership with our allies in the Gulf is a self-interested partnership. We are here because your security is our security, your prosperity is our prosperity, and your stability is our stability. We defend our homeland by ensuring your security here in the Gulf. We work together because it is in our mutual interest to do so. So our partnership is an enduring one because it's a partnership based on mutual, enlightened self-interest. The question about Iran, should there be some parallel discussion going on with Iran, between Iran and the countries of the Gulf? For all I know, there may be parallel discussions going on. I wouldn't expect us necessarily to be aware of all the channels that are open. But look, the big discussion is the discussion around Iran's nuclear program. The big distrust is the distrust around Iran's nuclear program. If we can get to a satisfactory conclusion on the nuclear program that will allow Iran to reintegrate into the international community, to become a trusted partner, pursuing a civil nuclear program in a spirit of full transparency, where we all have confidence that Iran is not seeking to develop a nuclear weapons capability, where the progressive removal of sanctions means that Iran's huge economic potential can start to be unleashed, then I think the conditions would exist for a thawing of relationships more generally, and the pursuit of constructive engagement between historic adversaries. Perhaps I'm being over-optimistic, but I have a sense that if we can clear this roadblock of the nuclear standoff, then the conditions will be right to explore other areas of cooperation and collaboration. And as Iran's economy opens up and generates a huge impact in that opening up, because Iran is a very large country, the consequences of that will be quite significant for the wider dialogue and the wider approach to collaboration in the region.
Philip Hammond, thank you very much indeed. Minister Shukri.
Thank you, and I'll try to do this in reverse order related to the key elements of a solution, whether regional or international. Necessarily international, although we would hope that the regional dimension would also be predominant. Over the last decade, I believe the region has suffered the consequences of lack of a unified approach when it came to many issues that have transpired. And despite the fact that we have given our best advice in terms of our relationships and the structures of international cooperation, they have not been heeded, and it is the region and it is our nations that have faced the consequences. Thereby, we would hope that there would be greater cooperation. But the challenges are immense, and they must be met through a cooperative arrangements and interaction at an international level, because of the, at times, the lack of capacity and the necessity for those who are in a position to do so to undertake the responsibilities that their status and the level of development has benefited them from. As for the nuclear non-proliferation and the nuclear weapon-free zone and other weapons of mass destruction, I did make a reference, although fleeting, to the issue, and I think the issue of the Iranian nuclear potential would have been much better served had we implemented a nuclear or weapons of mass destruction free zone in the region. Many years ago, we would have probably not had to face the current situation, and we would have created a much more beneficial security structure in this region. Now, the question is, why did that not happen? And we have to be serious and consistent in that there did not exist the political wills primarily within those who undertake the responsibility, I believe the P5 and others, to encourage the states of the region and primarily and to encourage Israel to show greater forthcomings in embracing what would have been a mutually beneficial regional security arrangements. We are equally disappointed by the lack of achievement currently, and would hope that there would be greater involvement as we approach the 2015 review conference of the NPT. It is only another opportunity for us to restate what is readily accepted during these review conferences, but is hardly implemented when we come down to the nitty-gritty of creating the security conditions that would presumably be beneficial internationally. I'm glad that the Syrian refugee issue and the lack of commitment from the international donors, because this is a serious problem, and I believe it is inconsistent with those who call for a solution to the problems of Syria, to greater democratization, to the need to address the aspirations of the Syrian people, but at the same time are lacking in demonstrating a commitment to the humanitarian dilemma that the Syrian people face, and those who are hosting vast numbers and have their economies been impacted because of their providing the support mechanisms to the Syrian people. There's two schools of thought on whether the Arabs or the West should deal with the problems. I think I've mentioned that this has to be a collective responsibility, and we are not bound by the experiences of the past, but should be embrace the potentials of the future. And finally, on Iran's potential participation in the coalition, to my knowledge, it has not declared its association to the coalition, and whatever actions, if true, I would believe necessarily have to be at the approval and acquiescence of the Iraqi government. So it's, I think, up to both parties to clarify this issue. Attack on Shiite militias, again, is a matter that we are looking forward to a national Iraqi army that can undertake the responsibilities, and that whatever militias existing currently will be a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed.
Thank you. I will go in the order of the questions that came about the objective of fighting Daesh in Iraq. The objective is clear, and the way it started was very clear. We met as foreign ministers in Jeddah with our presence of our colleague, Dr. Ibrahim al-Ja'fari, and in that meeting we pledged the support for Iraq against the existential threat that was prevailing at that time when the terrorist group were marching towards the capital of Baghdad. And of course we met again in Paris, and that conference was the conference for Iraq in this matter. Again, in the United Nations, we continued the same effort, and eventually the coalition came together and started military operations there. So yes, that's the objective, but when the question comes to talk about other militias, sectarian militias, Shia militias, this is an issue that has always been there, and it's Iraq's responsibility to address this issue, as any other country's responsibility to address issues of proxies and militias that carry the weapons and within a state, which is something that should not continue in the state itself. Iran's role in the coalition, we've heard the report that Iran has taken military action against Daesh, but certainly this is outside the coalition. The coalition is well known, and the countries in it are known, and Iran is not part of it, and which keeps this action as to be solely Iranian action, or maybe in agreement with the Iraqi government. This is something that can be addressed by the relevant authorities that I've mentioned, but it's not part of the effort of the coalition in fighting the terrorists. The next question I go to is from my colleague, Mr. Khalid Duwaisan, about how do I feel about the issues in the GCC that we went through. Well, we drew a lot of lessons. As I said in my speech, yes, as any group in the world, there are differences, there are different views, and there are different understandings, and that could have different levels in dealing with them, but that doesn't mean that we are not joined together in our core responsibility of ensuring the security of our countries. This we will not touch in any way. It's a vital interest of us all. But yes, we do draw lessons from the period we have passed, and that we will look forward to first of it, we need to deal with it completely in the next period, and then for it not to happen again. So this is something that is of utmost importance, because it will only give us more momentum in moving faster toward more unified positions. The other question about Iran must show trust. Yes, so we've said it many times. And how do we propose what they should do? First of all, definitely I agree with my colleague, Mr. Hammond, and Mr. Shukri, my colleagues, that the nuclear file should be transparent. This would be paramount to show confidence or give confidence to the neighbors that they are not a threat in this field, and that to give confidence to the world. The other issue is that Iran should also be positive in its engagements with the region, rather than engaging with proxies and people who carry weapons. I think Iran should also take a major role in engaging with the region in other fields and trying to be a trade partner, trying to be a cultural partner. We have a lot in common with the country. And try to stay away from engaging or defending or supporting or funding groups and proxies that are not necessarily or definitely not helpful in bringing stability to their countries, be it in Lebanon, be it in Syria, be it in Yemen, be it in many places. I think that engagement should be changed into a positive one, into a beneficial one for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've heard about a GCC that will be more extrovert and committed to helping itself. We've heard of an Egypt that doesn't wish to lead either from behind or in front, but in coordination and in unison with the rest of the region. We've heard that the UK is establishing a permanent presence here in the region in equal partnership with its Bahraini hosts. That strikes me as a more settled balance of responsibilities between local, regional, and outside powers, and almost a definition of what collective security should be about. So it's that sort of coordination that the three ministers have spoken about today, on which we hope the region can build. Can you join me in thanking these three gentlemen for their important strategic statements?